We know it by now. It's created a lot of controversy. Rishi Sunak has spoken out. That is front page news today. He's saying that free speech should be permitted. But it's all getting a bit nasty, this whole conversation about biological sex, trans rights and all the rest of it. What say you?
Kathleen Stock needs to speak. People can protest outside, but they can protest, you know, that's part of the rights in our country. You can protest. You can't stop her speaking. Her views are actually reasonably moderate. She's not saying anything terribly extreme, and actually this is within the realms of debate. It's not kind of on the fringe. But I'll make one point. Free speech is very important, and it's good that Rishi Sunak has said he backs it here. But I'll note, just last week, there was an international weapons expert, Dan Cazzetta, who was no-platformed and cancelled from speaking about his speciality, which is around nerve agents, at a Ministry of Defence conference, because he happened to say a few mean things about, I don't know, Brexit, and he's a Lib Dem. Now, free speech cuts both ways. The test of free speech is, will you support people that you don't agree with? And I think that is often quite interesting. I think Kathleen Stock should have the right to speak. I'd also argue that, you know, the other side, people who are making the opposite case, have the right to speak, and the people who are protesting have the right to protest, but not to stop her.
Yeah, I think you're quite a pathetic individual, actually, if you cannot handle hearing an opinion that you disagree with. It strikes me as so odd. Anyway, David?
Yeah, and the vast majority of people who get cancelled are people who have these kind of very sensible opinions and traditional opinions, such as there are two sexes, male and female, and so, no, you can't change your sex.
David, would you then criticise the government for cancelling Dan Cazzetta for his views? Yeah, he's an expert on nerve agents and
I honestly don't know anything about what he stands for and what his views are. So
he criticised the government on Twitter.
It depends on what conference he was going to, but I mean, he should have the free speech to say what he wants, of course, you know. But getting back to Kathleen Stock, I mean, it's unbelievable that we're even having this argument and people are trying to cancel her just for standing up for scientific truth. I mean, 5-10 years ago, this would have been regarded as absolutely insane, but this is where we are now. We've got snowflake activists going and screaming at her and saying, oh, we need a safe space in case we're distressed because of her views, even if they don't go in and see her. You know, I think a lot of this is just attention seeking, and it's just trying to, I don't know what it is. It's inverting just normality and trying to bring in something that is like out of Orwell's 1984, that you have to deny the evidence of your own eyes and of your own brain. It's
like the Emperor's New Clothes. That's what it smacks of to me, that a lot of this topic. But it's so nasty and it's so aggressive. And in many cases, it gets quite violent. And often, you know, the young people. And then I think to myself, oh, what are the parents doing with these young people? Because if that was my child who literally couldn't handle hearing an alternate view and needed to go and have therapy because someone said something to him that he didn't like, and I'd be having serious words, and I'd be looking in the mirror as well and saying to myself, what have I done that I've created this child, this young person, who is like this?
But they're indoctrinated. They're indoctrinated in schools, they're indoctrinated in universities. You've got this new subject, relationships and sex education, that the government has brought in England, Labour's brought it in Wales, the SNP's brought it in Scotland, and they're teaching kids all of this trans ideology. You've got children's picture books where we used to have like Ladybird books and, you know, nice old stories like, you know, Enid Blyton and so on.
Now we had
a good debate about that one time. But you've got these picture books now that are just propagandizing this trans ideology, and they're getting kids very, very young, and it's
entirely appropriate to be able to say, to have, at the right age for education, to say some people are same-sex attracted, some people have different gender identity. That is entirely appropriate, because where it goes, if one goes too far down the other way, you end up in a situation like in Florida, where books are banned.
Well, I disagree, because there is no such thing as gender that is different to sex. This was all made up starting with John Money in the 1950s, who did lots of very unethical experiments on children, and the ones, one of them sadly committed suicide after he'd done the experiment on them. It was then promoted by Judith Butler, and now it's mainstreamed, and it's going into schools, and it's confusing kids, and that shouldn't happen.
Well, do you have kids, relatives, your own kids, your grandkids? I don't know. Do you get concerned about these matters? And are you one of the parents of one of these children? Because I think you do have to look inward if your child is intolerant and cannot handle a different opinion.